Now let's talk about 16.2, which is her left hand fingernail scrapings. Again, in that situation, under the star mix, under star mix, what was your finding?
The DNA profile developed is attributable to Samantha Josephson.
And, I'm sorry, was Mr. Rowland included or excluded as part of that?
Nathaniel Rowland is excluded as a possible contributor.
Did you attempt to do any YSTR analysis on that item?
I did.
And what was the result?
No YSTR profile was developed.
Okay. And how is that different from what you just described a moment ago about insufficient for interpretation?
No profile developed means there was no DNA developed. Insufficient means there was a little bit of DNA, but not enough to interpret it or make any comparisons to it.
What was your conclusion regarding Ms. Josephson as it pertains to the serrated blade on item 104?
The DNA profile was interpreted as single source. Scenario 1 is Samantha Josephson contributed the DNA profile versus Scenario 2, an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the DNA profile. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 6.9 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson contributed the profile than if an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the profile.
And the level of support for that?
This statistic falls in our very strong support range.
All right, let's bring in Court TV crime and justice reporter Joy Lim Nakran, who joins us live from Columbia, South Carolina tonight. I always like to step back and bring folks the big picture here on closing arguments. Let's start with the DNA. Is there any DNA that came up during the course of this trial that is linking this defendant to Samantha Josephson?
It seems that way after today's testimony, Vinny. I mean, it was pretty clear after that testimony that that Samantha Josephson's DNA is essentially all over that defendant's car, you know, on the back seat of the car, on the headrest, and then there was that footprint that we heard from another expert, a latent print expert, also from the State Law Enforcement Division, on the back window of the defendant's vehicle that prosecutors say indicates that she really fought for her life. In addition, we heard that forensic expert also explain that there was DNA from both the victim and the defendant found on the handle of that multi-tool piece that we also heard the ex-girlfriend of the defendant describe him to have earlier in the day. And then it was the victim's blood all over the blade of that multi-tool piece as well, Vinny. So certainly a lot of strong DNA and other physical evidence presented.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the DNA on what we're looking at right now, is this the alleged murder weapon? And is the DNA of Samantha's DNA is there and the defendant's?
That's it. That's what we heard today.
That's huge. That's huge. Now let's get back to the nail scrapings and Samantha Josephson herself. The big splash during the opening statement by the defense was there's nothing related to Nathaniel Rowland that is found on Samantha Josephson. How has that turned out inside the courtroom?
That's true enough. However, it's also been revealed that her fingernails had been cut. So, you know, as we know, that from kind of defensive wounds to fighting off an attacker, under the fingernails is a key place to potentially find DNA of the attacker. So that explains that. And we also know that we heard some of these forensics experts describe how there was kind of mud and external factors that had kind of rubbed off potential forensic evidence. And remember, her body was found outside in a remote area. So, you know, it easily could have rubbed off.
When you say cut, be a little more specific. What do you mean the nails were cut?
The fingernails were trimmed. The fingernails were trimmed when the body was discovered, according to State Law Enforcement Division investigators.
So what the inference there is that whoever murdered Samantha Josephson after the murder cut her nails?
You know, Vinny, no one made that connection, but you lay out one possibility. I wonder if the nails could have broken and appeared cut. Maybe they were cut on a weapon of some sort, right? No one's really said how the nails got that way, but the nails appeared to have been cut, according to investigators.
Okay. Anything else from the scene? Now, where her body was recovered, we saw a map. That location is significant in this case, isn't it?
It's very significant. First of all, it's about an hour east driving distance from Columbia. It's a remote area that investigators describe as not having a lot of traffic, apart from people who go there either to farm, to hunt, or because they live there. And interestingly enough, Nathaniel Rowland had family who lived about 2 miles from there.
All right. A mixed bag of evidence today, but seems pretty compelling for prosecutors, but we have some guests tonight who might not agree. Joy Lim Nakran, stay where you are. We'll get back to you in just a moment. Let's introduce tonight's think tank. Joining us in New York, former senior homicide prosecutor Bernarda Villalona. In Houston, Texas, criminal defense attorney Brian Weiss. And in Cleveland, Ohio, criminal defense attorney and law professor at Cleveland State, Ian Friedman. All right, Bernarda, let's talk about the nail scrapings, okay? They did the nail scrapings, defendant's DNA excluded there. What does that tell you, if anything?
So being that I was a former homicide prosecutor for 10 years, Vinny, it really doesn't do much for me because there's so many reasons why they wouldn't have found Nathaniel Rowland's DNA underneath the nails of this victim. Obvious, just like Joy just said, it appeared that the nails were actually cut. Also, we don't know whether there were any injuries on Nathaniel Rowland's body, whether he was actually scratched. What kind of clothing was he wearing? Was he wearing long sleeves? That would have prevented his DNA from being underneath her nails. There's so many reasons why DNA won't show up, but regardless, what does DNA tell you? DNA just tells you that that person's profile, the DNA profile, was found at that specific location at some time. It doesn't tell you what happened. And what tells you what happened in this case is all the evidence they have with the car, the blood in the vehicle, the cell phone towers ringing, all of that evidence is what tells you what happened.
All right, Brian, the defendant's car is clearly the murder scene. The question is he the one in his own car?
Well, that's a tough sell to the jury to convince them or create reasonable doubt that he wasn't there at the time of the offense. A couple of quick takes, Vinny. Number one, the penitentiaries all over America are filled with defendants convicted on circumstantial evidence and without DNA. And on some level, circumstantial evidence, and I've heard prosecutors talk about this since the Kennedy administration, is in many ways more compelling, more credible than eyewitness testimony or testimony from human beings. Why? Because I think we all know, and you don't have to binge watch Law and Order to recognize it, that witnesses take sides. Witnesses ultimately can lie, deceive, dissemble. At the end of the day, guys, circumstantial evidence doesn't lie.
Yeah, witnesses are not necessarily reliable. I'm going to do a little experiment right now. All right, what color is my tie? Bernarda?
I think it's pretty blue like your eyes, but I didn't really.
You say blue. Ian, what color is my tie?
Vinny, I was so focused on the wisdom coming from your words, I never even thought to look at the tie.
Brian Weiss, what color is my tie?
Vinny, you and I are pledging the same fraternity tonight, bro. I think it's blue. I think it's blue.
No, it's purple.
Or a lighter blue.
It's purple. It's like a lavender. See? Eyewitness testimony, not so reliable, folks. All right, Ian, your thoughts here. You've got the DNA of the defendant and the DNA of the victim on the alleged murder weapon, yet you don't have the defendant's DNA and the nail scrapings from the victim. What does that all mean?
Well, look, Mr. Rowland definitely is involved. I mean, his girlfriends got him cleaning the car, talking about the blood. I mean, the blood was all over, and him saying it's none of your business. He's involved somehow, some way. Did he do it? This is one we got to watch all the way through the trial. The nail trimmings and so forth. Here's another thought: gloves. Was he involved? Yes. Was there someone else that may have committed the crime that he's covering up for? That's yet to be determined. And here you've got defense counsel really pumping up the investigation to say just how thorough it was, so that then they can say, despite how thorough it was, there really wasn't any of that evidence. And as Bernarda said, DNA doesn't mean a lot to her as a former homicide prosecutor, but as you let off here tonight, Vinny, it does mean a lot to jurors.
Okay, let's take a listen. You mentioned girlfriend. We had another former girlfriend, I believe, of the defendant. I don't, I'm not keeping up with his black book, but Destiny testified, Destiny Catino. Let's take a listen to her testimony, because some of it, again, helps prosecutors, and it seems some of it could potentially help the defense.
You had an opportunity to, like I said, be in his car from time to time?
Yeah.
Did you ever see it with any kind of tools or anything interesting in the car?
The little, it's something you could use to open something, but like,
I'm sorry.
I can't really describe it.
I'd like to show you something that's been marked as State Exhibit number 225. Is this something that you've seen before?
Not exactly that, but something like that. Yeah.
Something like this in his car?
Yeah,
And you've seen him with something like this?
something like that.
And you said he's had it and he was opening things in the opening package?
I mean, yeah, you know, you use it to open something. I mean, that's it.
And you said that you had driven his car
I have.
and you wrecked his car.
Yeah,
But that wreck was in January of 2019, right?
I can't remember.
Okay. And it was in the shop for a while?
Yeah.
Because there was pretty significant damage on it.
Can't hear you, ma'am.
Oh, sorry, you have to answer out loud.
Yeah.
And you also told the investigators when you met with them that you knew that other people had driven Nate's car also, right?
Maybe, I know his cousin would maybe go to the store, but not really, no.
All right, so if other people are perhaps driving his car, do they need to name a name here to have any chance with this jury, Brian?
Well, again, I mean, the state's theory is that this defendant on trial owned the car, drove the car, and was present and ultimately engaged in the conduct charged in the indictment. You don't have to show motive, and sometimes you don't have to tie up loose ends that may ultimately not impact whether or not a juror could find guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. I think one thing, though, is worthy of mention, as you pointed out in your open, Vin, is that the defense made a big deal in opening statement about how there was no DNA from the defendant present. You know, I've been doing this long enough to understand that if you write a check during opening statement, you better be able to catch it during final argument.
Well, no, DNA present on the victim, on the victim. It's all over the scene, but on the victim herself. So let me ask you, Ian, if in fact the theory is other people drive his car, in order for the jury to find that to be a reasonable explanation for what happened here, which would be reasonable doubt, do you think the defense has to say who was riding the car, who borrowed his car, who took his car?
I don't think so necessarily. I think that if the defense lawyer does a good job stressing and educating the jury about the burden of proof, about what the prosecution could have shown, didn't show, and leaves that hole out there, that is the doubt that they would hope that the jury would hold on to. It might be helpful if someone drove the car that they knew committed the crime, but you got to be careful to start naming people, and then they all get up there and they say, yeah, I drove the car 3 weeks ago, or I went here, or I picked up the kids, but I was in another state at the time, I didn't commit it, and then the state goes through everyone and eliminates all those people as possible suspects. So you got to be careful. It's safer to simply say all of these other people did it. Nobody looked, these are the possibilities. The one thing about the DNA, though, that I just want to follow up on what Brian said, that tool itself, I thought that was great evidence for the defense today, because they were showing that that tool had been in the car and that he had handled it, the defendant, many times before. So the prosecution is going to say the DNA was on this weapon that was used solely or was part of, but the explanation's there. He had that all the time. So someone else still could have used that, and you'd expect to see Dawson's DNA on it, and not necessarily because he used it as a murder weapon.
I want to bring Joy in just for a quick preview of where we are in the trial. What's coming up Monday?
Yeah, so far we've heard from just over 30 witnesses for the state. The state had over 100 witnesses that they could potentially call on their list. We haven't yet heard from the medical examiner, so of course that's something that we would always expect to hear in cases like this, and more about those graphic images that we've seen, really taking a look at the condition of this victim's body when she died, Vinny.
All right. All set for Monday. Joy Lim Nakrin, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Great job.